Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. So I am obviously posting this video as my first one, and yeah, it's kind of nerve-wracking, but we'll see how it goes. Today I want to talk to you about 10 tips that I feel that you should know when planning to come to Australia on a working holiday visa. These are 10 things that I found really helpful, and I just want to pass them on to you and hopefully help somebody out there. So if you do like this video, then please make sure to show me some support. I would really appreciate it. First of all, I'm going to give you a bit of background. So my name is Emma and I am 20 years old and I am here on a working holiday visa, and that is the 417 subclass visa. Yeah, so I have been travelling around Australia for 3 months now, and I have done the entire east coast. So now it's time for me to settle down and find work, and you know, the bit that everyone dreads. I'll talk to you first of all about the thoughts that I had about coming to Australia, and it might be similar to you or you might have different thoughts, but I was genuinely a bit scared to come out here. It was something that was kind of out of my comfort zone, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's something that I've always talked about doing, is travelling. I love travelling Australia, and it's genuinely given me so much more confidence and changed me as a person. So for that, I'm really grateful that I have this opportunity to be here today. Leaving my mum, like my mum is like my best friend, so you know, I'm always talking to her about things. I'm always there, she's always there for me, I'm always there for her. Like, it's just like a really good relationship that we have. So to leave that and to leave everything that I know and love, it was quite difficult. Not gonna lie, it was one of the hardest things that I've probably done. But now with the evolution of technology, you can FaceTime them. I know it's not the same as seeing them in person, but you know, it does make that little bit easier because you're still getting to talk to them, and it's not just through a message or a letter. Quitting your job as well, that's another thing that's kind of a bit like oft, because you know, you are in this stable job, whether you're happy, whether you're not so happy, it just depends on your circumstances, but you have a stable job, you have stable income, and you're giving all of that up. And you know, it kind of, once I left, I was kind of like oft, like, am I doing the right thing? I think it's probably one of the best things that I've done, and I'm glad that I did it. Into the tips. So my first tip for you guys is about applying for your visa. So that's like the first step that you need to do. There's no point buying flights, buying accommodation and all these things when you don't even have your visa, because that's like the most important. So you need to have that granted for you first. So you can apply for your visa anytime as long as you're not in the country. So I think I applied for mine in May last year, and I didn't enter Australia until September. So you have a year to enter the country after your visa is granted. So obviously if my visa was granted in May, then I had until May this year to enter Australia, but obviously I decided to come in September because that's just when everything kind of finished up for me. All my college was done. I'm not going to talk too much about applying for the visa because I am going to make a separate video on that. What I say is I have got the 417 subclass visa, which allows me to travel around Australia and work in a visa for a year. So it's my first year visa, and you can get your second visa and your third visa with some restrictions. So you have to do like 3 months of farm work to get your second visa, and definitely something that you need to look into if you are going to be staying in Australia for a long period of time. My second tip for you guys is to book your accommodation. So accommodation over here, especially during the peak seasons, so probably summertime, everyone wants to come over to Australia, especially if you live in the UK. You want to get away from the winter and come and enjoy some Australia's summer. So a lot of people will be booking up in advance, so make sure that you have booked something for you coming over. I booked a place in Melbourne for 3 weeks, and the reason for that was actually because I felt that I would take a wee bit of time to get over the jet lag, because I'd never actually had jet lag before. I'd never travelled that far a distance before, so I've never had jet lag, so I thought that might take me a little bit longer to get over the jet lag. And I also wanted to do things like setting up a sim and setting up my bank and things like that I needed to get done out the way once I'd got to Australia. So I wanted to see Melbourne, but I also had a lot of hard graft to do, so I spent 3 weeks there. Personally, I didn't feel I needed 3 weeks. 3 weeks was a bit too long for me, but definitely think about that when you're booking your first accommodation. So when you're booking accommodation, there's a few places that you can obviously look to get accommodation. It just depends on what you're looking for, what your budget is, and how many people you're trying to book for as well. So the most popular for backpackers in Australia is probably the hostels. So a good site for using that is called hostelworld.com. So you go to the website and you put in where you want to go. So I obviously put in Melbourne, and then you add in the dates that you want. So I've put down a week, but obviously you can put in whatever you want. And then you also put in how many guests, and then it gives you all these different options, different prices of all the different hostels in Melbourne. I personally didn't stay in a hostel in Melbourne. I booked an Airbnb. I'll leave this link down below, but basically I used Airbnb and I got this beautiful flat in Preston. I'll show you some pictures just now. So we stayed in this flat for about 3 weeks in a place called Preston, and it was about 50-minute tram drive from the main centre, so it was ideal location for us. And we also found this on Airbnb. Really easy to navigate that site too. You just sign up. So when you go onto the website, you go to the search and type in where you want to find accommodation. So for me, I put in Melbourne, and then you decide on the dates, how long you're going to stay for. And you also tell them how many people are going to be staying as well. And then it gives you all these different options of places around the area that you can stay, and for all different prices. You can also click on the map option, and that will take you to this site where it will show you all the different areas that you can stay. So here is Preston, so that's about 50 minutes away from Melbourne on a tram. And yep, and then you can also filter the options as well. So I put the price down right to about the lowest that it can go for the week, and then had a look at all the options within my price range. So it's that easy. Tip for you guys would be to book a transfer. So this one kind of seems a bit, why would I need a transfer when there's trains and buses and things? But for me personally, I would definitely rather a transfer. After, I think we had about a 26-hour journey from Glasgow to Melbourne, and we were absolutely knackered. It was really handy that we booked our transfer beforehand, so that we could just get in and straight to the accommodation, and then we could just get settled in. Was the original plan, however that didn't happen. I'll talk a bit more about that in a further video, but basically we booked through A to B transfer, and they wait in the airport for you for about an hour after your flight is landed, and then they just take you direct to where you want to go. And it did cost us $70, which is a little bit pricey, especially if you're on a budget, and it's obviously more expensive than getting a train. For me, I'd rather pay that extra so that I knew that I could just jump off the plane, get in the transfer, and straight to where I'm staying, and I don't need to worry. My next tip would be to apply for insurance. So make sure that you have applied for your insurance before you leave, because you're obviously going to want that for your travelling as well. So I have got my insurance with a site called Wild Nomads, and this basically allows me to have my insurance for the entire year, which is great because that covers me for my full visa. Obviously there's loads of insurance companies out there, so it's definitely good to research and see what kind of works for you and your circumstances, but for me that was the one that worked. I can also add on any other countries that I wish to travel to as well, which I think is quite good. So my next tip for you guys is something that you might not have considered. So I would say that the next tip is to cancel your phone. So this is something that a lot of people maybe forget or just don't consider. So when you come to Australia, if you're from the UK, you obviously can't use your SIM over in Australia unless you want to pay for additional charges. So my advice would be to cancel your UK SIM, and then once you get to Australia you can get an Australian SIM and you just use that as normal. Of course, if you connect to Wi-Fi you can still contact your family and things like that, but it's good to have an Australian number, especially over here, because if anyone over here asks your number, for example Medicare or doctors or any jobs that you go for and things like that, they'll obviously want an Australian number, so it's good to have that set up. And there's no point you paying for 2 SIMs because you're not going to be using 2 SIMs, so why don't you just cancel your UK one and have the Australian one? And okay, so the next tip that I would like to say is check your passport. Check the expiry date on your passport. You don't want to be that person that wakes up on the day of your flight and opens your passport and realizes that it's expired, because I have personally not done it. I've heard of people that have, and yeah, this is something that worries me and I check it like all the time just to make sure. So my passport was valid for me coming over here, however it was going to run out in July this year, so that would be halfway through my visa, so that was, I wouldn't be able to get home. So that's also something to consider. Make sure that you do that like a couple of months before, because I know that when I applied there was a huge demand for passports, so it was quite a long process. So my next tip is to get to check for your immunisations, so any vaccines that you need to get into Australia. So when I was applying there was only like a guidance of a few that you know that they recommended you to get. However, I did definitely get the COVID vaccines up to date because I felt like at the time that was an important thing that I needed to get, because you never know, the restrictions were always changing and stuff, but that might not concern you as much now. My next advice is to make sure that you have cash. So go to your local post office and get some Australian dollars, because it's good to have like just like cash, because some places might not accept cards, especially if you come in here and you don't take my advice on the transfer. Maybe you would rather get a taxi because it's cheaper for you. Some taxis might not accept cards, so it's good to always have cash on you, just to have that as a backup. It's also really important that you bring cash as well, because if you're obviously from the UK and you come and use your UK card in Australia, then charge quite a bit just to take money out or even to pay with something. So it's good to always have that cash just until you set up your Australian bank account, so that you're not getting charged loads for like a $2 transaction. Another tip as well is, obviously the UK to Australia is a long flight and you have stopovers. So if you have a stopover, for instance we had a stopover in Kuala Lumpur, and we got there and we were like really quite hungry, a bit thirsty, we were wanting something. Then we realised that we didn't have that currency. So I think that it's also quite good to just have a little bit of cash on you from the currency that you are stopping over in, just in case you do get thirsty. Could be that you need to let your bank know that you're going to Australia, because they might end up cancelling your card because they might see it as suspicious activity. And so I think it's really important that you tell your bank that you are heading off. This is so easy to do. I literally just went into my local branch and I explained my situation. Told them that I was going to Australia for a year on a working holiday visa, and that I wanted to inform them because I didn't want my card to be cancelled. And they were like all good about it. They basically just put a note in my file. All of your important files, so whether that's your CV, your insurance, your visa, things like that. It's always good to have these things backed up. What I mean by backed up is I got all of my important documents printed out, and then once I got them printed out, I saved them onto my laptop, and then I also saved them onto a flash drive so that I could have it access to them everywhere. Since you might come across a job interview online and you only have your paper copy CV, so therefore you're going to have to type it again to upload it or take a picture of it to upload it. They will ask you for a copy of your visa when you enter Australia, so it's good to have a copy of that printed out as well as backed up on your computer. Also, any qualifications, certificates, courses that you've been on, I think it's also really good to have them printed out just to back up your CV, and as well keep them on your computer as well. And also I photocopied my passport and my driver's license just in case anything happened to them. At least I would have something to if you have made it this far in the video, thank you so much for staying, and thank you so much for listening. I hope that these 10 tips helped you in some way, and stay tuned for more videos because I will be making more in-depth videos about traveling and my tips and advice for yous. I've also got a blog that I'm starting up as well, so I will leave that linked in the description as well as all my social media. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that this helped you. And if you have any questions or worries, please leave a message and I'll try my best to get back to everything. And I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video.